Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Sunday. We are so glad that you are here. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be the on-camera facilitator. I was the biggest Laguna Beach fan, so I obviously, with this theme, the first song I thought of was Come Clean. So wanted to do that, wanted to share that. So excited to be here. And I want to give a huge shout out to my co-facilitator who you will see in the chat. That is Jen O. We are the former and forever Team Texas. We are very excited to be here. We're in our comfy, cozy pajamas. And so we're so excited to be here for this one as we definitely get rid of those Sunday scaries and roll into our week one of December. So I'm already seeing a lot of our returning and regular socials. Welcome. It is so great to see all of your names in there. And I love seeing you each greet each other. It's the best group of accountability buddies we could have. But also, if you are new, we would love to welcome you in the chat. So just double check because you can participate in as much or as little as this social as you want. Just make sure that if you want it to go to the larger Silk and Sonder group in the chat, it needs to be set to everyone. And sometimes Zoom will be a little tricky and it'll default back to hosts and panelists. Hosts and panelists comes to just myself and Jen, and we will happily answer your questions there. But we usually assume you want to talk to everybody else. So just double check. And see what you want to do there. And as always, when it comes to these socials, you can come just for the chat, or maybe you want to come just for the setup because this is the time you've set aside for yourself to do so. Or maybe you're here for some inspiration, or just, you had a bit of a rough week and you want to hit that reset button. We are glad that you're here exactly as you are, and we can't wait to move into our social. And then just as a heads up, and I will include it later, we are having our Black Friday still that'll continue until I think maybe midnight tonight, but just double check. And then there'll be another announcement on the website as well as Instagram for any of those other Cyber Monday options, as well as some New Year sales as well. But we are limited on those products. But when in doubt, email hello@silkandsonder.com before you use those because there's definitely some sale options there. So do not hesitate. Do not pay full price for anything at the moment. Just double check. And then, as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. We do always say limit repetitive product and accessory questions, but let's be honest, we love to talk about our products. We love that you guys have such amazing recommendations for apps. And I know we talk a lot about movies, TV, all of those amazing things that we love to hear. So you can definitely share those here. But we just ask not to detract from the social that we're here and why we're here. But like I said, we always appreciate getting those recommendations. And then, as always, why Jen and I have some information. A lot of the specifics we don't. Make sure to redirect all those customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And then Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you're responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So maybe this is exactly that reset that you need. Maybe you need something else. Maybe you need to leave last week in last week. Maybe you need to leave last month in last month. But it is certainly your opportunity to almost make that intentional and optimistic decision of kind of what lessons you're going to take into the next week, what actionable items you're going to take in the next week, and how you can kind of approach that. So I certainly love the opportunity to kind of add that perspective because I will say I've had a rough couple of weeks. And I think it's just with the seasonal change, it's cold, it's dark, I'm sad. So it becomes those kind of things. So I've been certainly trying to come up with ways to trick myself into being in a slightly better mood. And so, with a new month, we have this new theme, and we are still getting used to the idea of renewal in December because at the monthly social I hosted, there were a couple of people that thought maybe this was a little bit more suited for January. But with some of the inspiration that I felt like we had, this is almost like that really, really nice. I always treat it as so when I was playing soccer growing up and I had like a kick that I had to take, or I always think of like the place kickers or some of those punters, like it's very much sports references, and they take that just kind of big deep breath before they do something. I think that this is that deep breath before we sprint into the holidays, before everything becomes just a little bit chaotic. Our time doesn't become our own. And like I said, it's one of those things like I feel like it starts after Thanksgiving and then I blink and it's February. So I think this is that perfect deep breath exhale to kind of sort out what we want to leave in 2025 and what we want to bring into 2026. And so, with that, I found some other quotes to kind of inspire. And it was the renewal and restoration are not luxuries, they are essential. So it becomes that opportunity of you're going to have to sit and maybe kind of figure out what you need to do and pivot and come up with those new ideas. Or I feel like there are times where someone is going to kind of force that on you. So being prepared and doing so is something that just it's part of life. It's part of how we learn and grow and move and all of those things. So I like to see it as certainly as like this becomes those essential tools and not some of those nice to haves. And it's more of like, can we take that type of idea and being able to do so? And then I do like this idea of renewal is what happens when you realize that some of the stuff you've been carrying around doesn't matter. And I went to a fun event with a friend of mine, and even she was kind of telling the story of just you hit that perspective of like people will kind of say something and maybe you get a little bit more offended of it. And so someone was telling her that they were offended by what someone said, and her advice kind of was like, she's like, I don't think they thought about that. I don't think it's they've thought of it, they said it, and then they moved on. So I think there's so much of that idea of like we get very consumed with all of these outside kind of devices, and it's like, well, maybe we don't need to worry about that as much as we like to think we do. Even I joke, people do not think nearly as much as me as I like to think they do. And I just dwell. And that is kind of what eats me up, where it's like, ooh, I wonder if they were offended when I said this or all those other things. So I like the idea of it, renewal being one of those absolutely essential things that we need to kind of sit and focus on and make time for, as well as it is an opportunity to decide what we are going to let go and what we want to lean into. And so we have our agenda, which we're going to do the renewal mind map, and then we're going to do that rosebud thorn reflection. And depending on if you're working in your November journal or if you've officially moved into your December journal, we've got a couple different pages for that rosebud thorn exercise. And then we're going to do the weekly setup pages. So, what's also really fun about the first week of the month means we do get a new mind map. And that means a new theme, a new opportunity to kind of create your mind map page. So you're going to want to find a blank page in your journal. This could be a dedicated page. A lot of people use that last blank page in the journal, or maybe it's part of the weekly scratch pad, or you repurpose one of the other squares on the weekly pages for your mind map question. But this is an opportunity each week to dive a little bit deeper into the theme for each week. And there'll be 4 weeks this month. So we'll have 4 different options, and then we'll have a bonus one at the end of the year for that last week. And so there are oftentimes we focus too much on what we haven't done yet instead of how we've grown. This month, we'll be exploring our theme of renewal with a focus on celebrating progress over perfection and creating space to move forward, which is kind of an adjacent version, I think, of the renewal definition. So we're going to start off right off the bat with week one, and that is what is your favorite thing you have done for self-care this year? Because we definitely want to lean into some of these themes from a little bit of an internal and a self-care perspective. And so it may be something small or something big. Why was it your favorite, and how did it make you feel? So I will go back and forth between all of these slides, so don't worry, but if you miss something, please put it in the chat, and I will go back when I go off camera and the music starts playing. So not only do we have the questions that were listed on that page, they're the first 3 sentences on this page, but I also kind of wanted to think of other ways to kind of explore this. And I am certainly one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda people. So obviously I turn toward if you didn't get to do something to renew your self-care, what would it have been? Can you incorporate it this week or make a plan for it? Because I feel like there have been a few things I was like, ooh, I should do that. And I blink and it's like 2 or 3 months later and you're like, wait, why didn't I do that? And yes, we are on a blank page, Michelle, or in some sort of blank section. My example is the one on the right. This is the last blank page in the journal, and this is how I've decorated it. I'm a big sticker person. And I do have a story about these stickers, which we'll see in the rosebud thorn. And then I also like the idea of, was this something that you did solo or with your village? Would it have looked different if you did something solo? Because I do find that there's a great kind of line, and a lot of us do get so much renewal and recharge from our chosen families, our families, and all those things. But sometimes maybe you need to look a little bit more into that self thing and kind of self sustainability as well. And so for me, a lot of it was my theme for self care and renewal was I said yes to a lot of things. I didn't turn anything down. I didn't just sit and sulk at home because I couldn't find someone to go do something with. So that was kind of big where I was like, I invited people to come with me, but I still planned on doing it. And so I took a little bit of one of those, like my self care was not the rest that it probably should have been, but it was a little bit more of these doing and kind of the reset, the things that make me happy, going out and seeing things, going to really nice restaurants, going to see shows, all those things that certainly recharged me in another capacity. And I think it really helped me kind of set those really kind of personal and professional work boundaries a little bit better because I was making a conscious effort to, put my phone away, to go out of my comfort zone, to unplug just even from my phone when I was running errands to the point if someone called me when I was out and about, I would actually message them back and be like, I'm not available. Let me call you back in a little bit. And that has been really kind of a relief a little bit. And I hope to continue carrying that. So I would love if you want to share in the chat kind of your self-care favorites from this year. And I'm going to go back and forth between all these. So again, we're working on that mind map week one. So it's a combination of setting up your mind map if you haven't already done so. And then what's great, if you can't come up with anything today, you can work on this the whole week. So we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Please continue to share, even as we move to the next prompts. And same thing with, please continue to share your responses or your thoughts and feelings, even as we go. Just have to be a little cautious of time. But I loved seeing everyone's responses. I loved seeing the leaning into the self-care, but also setting boundaries and having some of those potentially tough conversations. Appreciated seeing that. And then I love seeing everybody's recommendations, all the wonderful trips that everyone was taking, a lot of spa days, sound bath days. I actually made getting facials. I feel like I took a page out of Maya, one of our other facilitators' books. She gets those pretty regularly. And I was like, I'm going to start doing it. I found a wonderful lady here and she's great and I love them. I feel like I get a lot of great inspiration from those and it is so nice. And I have noticed a difference. So thank you everybody for sharing. And what's really nice about the mind maps, we know that they are not printed in your journal, but it is an opportunity to kind of add that creative spin because sometimes you really want to lean into the design and some of those things. Like I said, I really love this. I was inspired by obviously the Christmas stickers and Christmas lights. Or maybe there are other times that you're like, I just really want to jot down some of these. And maybe it's not every question that you answer, it's not every week, but it is an opportunity to just have it there and maybe think on it and start mulling over these things because I have found that I may not always have the answer that I'm looking for, but I've been able to have some of those kind of, as I would call them, the serious sitting and staring at yourself in the mirror and having those tough times. So I find it really appreciative, and I've definitely come to have a really kind of soft spot around the mind maps. So thoroughly enjoy them, and thank you for sharing. So now we're going to move into that rosebud thorn reflection. And so if you are trying to close out your November journal, this is going to be on page 56. And if you have already moved into your December journal, then it's going to be on a blank page or a blank section because we're just not there yet. But the rosebud thorn option is great because it is an opportunity to look at the highs, the lows, and everything in between of your previous week. And like I said, I like that really opportunity to intentionally decide what am I going to do with these things that happen? What am I going to do with the feelings and the emotions and the momentum and all those things that am I going to take it with me into the next week, or am I just going to acknowledge it and then leave it? So the rose is going to be something that was a highlight, a win, something that made you smile, that made you happy. And I was telling Jen a little bit earlier, I actually had kind of events every night or every afternoon this past week. So I went with my amazing group of friends here and we did a trivia night. I love trivia nights. We ended up winning, which was really fun. And it had a Christmas flair to it, which I always think is super fun. And then I luckily got to go see Wicked for Good last night with another group of friends. And then I went to this Maker's Mart and a cocktail class today with another friend. So it's more of like I just had a lot of really fun things to do, but they were at the right times during the day that I wasn't rushed. I wasn't leaving and I was able to get everything done. So it was just a well-planned, busy weekend. The bud is an emerging opportunity, something that you're looking forward to, something that is potentially on the horizon, something that you get excited about. So the stickers that I used on my mind map, they're from this Peter Popper book, and I bought this months ago. But I told myself I was not going to open it because it's a Christmas theme. I wasn't going to open it until December to do my mind map. And I squealed like a little kid on Christmas morning when I opened it today to work on this. It made me so happy. All of the Christmas stickers, and because they have like the nostalgia vintage looking one, they've got the like really fun pop culture one. They have a couple pages dedicated to the Nutcracker. So the amount of joy that this little sticker book is going to bring me for December, I am going to be an absolute menace. But I highly recommend it. It is the Merry and Bright Christmas Festive Sticker Book from Peter Popper Press. So I love it. I have a lot of their versions, and this made me so happy. So everyone's getting Christmas cards. And then the challenge, which is the thorn, something that didn't go so well, something that maybe was a negative, a low, something that took up too much time, energy, and effort in your mind, body, or soul. For me, work has been just a little unnecessarily worky than usual. And it just kind of sent me through the roof a few times. And so, it'll be like I think all of us need maybe a break from each other, and that's kind of where we're at. But as always, we are on, again, if you're in the November journal, page 56, December, we're on that blank page. But if you would like to share your rosebud thorns in the chat, we always like to celebrate those roses, get excited for those buds and the things to come, and then really just send some extra thoughts, feelings, prayers, anything everything for some of those thorns as you guys kind of traverse that. And Jen, I was already ahead of things, putting amazing things in there. But like I said, it was a pretty good week, even though it hit some kind of lows. But I would say collectively, I walked away in pretty good spirits. So we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I always appreciate the just honesty and love and support that comes with sharing these rosebud thorns, because sometimes it's nice just to put it out into the universe. And I do know that this is always a tough time for folks, but I can definitely say we will be here. The socials will still be here. And so you are always welcome to those, because I do think this is, especially if you are one of our regular socialers or even new to this, it's always just, I enjoy the check-in because I feel like I get to see so much of your lives on a weekly basis with each and every one of these things. So it's always nice to see how people are living their lives and kind of existing. That's the wonderful nature of Sonder. And that's why I kind of come out of the Silken Sonder that everyone has these very large, vivid, and colorful and amazing lives going on at the same time. So just being able to kind of put all of these things out into the universe with this wonderful group is always, at least I find, a really great exercise at the end of each week. And it's certainly a way that I like to then now pivot into those weekly setup pages because it certainly becomes one of those, well, if I had a good week, I can keep moving with that momentum. Or if I just had a week where work was too worky, life was too lifey, and I can just leave it and start anew just as we turn that new page. And so, with that in mind, we're now going to move into those weekly planner pages. And so, this is going to be in the December journal. It's going to be page 26 and 27. And what I always like to kind of frame this is, what do you need from this week? What do you need to get through this week? I have found that if I ask myself that, I can then, excuse me, get a little bit more inspiration, because sometimes what you need this week is going to be very different than what you needed even last week or 2 weeks ago or the random week in August. Because sometimes what you need is exactly as written on the page, and sometimes what you need is those foundational little sections that just either get knitted together to provide a little bit more support, or you need them completely separate as just like your, that is how your brain needs to separate them for this week. Or maybe what you need is to completely repurpose this page, or sometimes what you need is a break from some of these pages. I've absolutely ripped out some of these pages before because I was like, that's just not what I need this week. And I think it's always that I always hate to call it that I just need to survive the week instead of thrive during the week. But I have found that that is how I structure some of these things, and it helps me manage my expectations a little bit better, just so that I can at least kind of get something out of these pages as we go through. So, with that being said, we're going to start at the top of page 26 with this week I want to feel. The way I approach this one is I like to ask myself, how do I want to feel this time next week? Because I like to take a little bit of the ownership. I am a type A competitive personality, so I always need a goal. I always need something that I can come back to. And then as I'm experiencing those rosebuds and thorns of the week, the highs and lows and everything in between, this is that thing I can come back to as my equilibrium, as my even keel. And so that's how I always like to kind of approach this particular question. And so maybe it's leaning into the season, the winter. Maybe it's the best way to cope with some of the snow is that you're just gonna embrace it. Maybe it's more of something, less of something. Maybe it is 1% better. Maybe it's 5% warmer. Maybe it is, I'm gonna stay in my pajamas as long as possible. Maybe it's multiple words, multiple phrases. Maybe it's a sticker. Stickers are worth 1,000 words, so you can always use that. I loved the positive pineapple one because I'm a sucker for alliterations, but I love the drawing and it was recently posted, so I feel like it's almost like maybe an inside joke when it comes to the holiday season. But I love the idea. I love that inspiration of what those things can bring. So I'm going to play just a really quick song. But if you want to share in the chat how you want to feel this time next week or this week you want to feel, we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And what I loved is that you leaned a little bit more into kind of the phrases and the full thing of explanations and not just single words. I love when that almost like I feel like I'm kind of breaking the rules a little bit, so that adds to the excitement. But at the same time, it also is not something that you have to come up new with each week. Maybe it's a copy and paste from the previous week. Maybe it's leaning into this month's theme, or maybe as we're coming to the end of the year, maybe it is revisiting your word of the year. And so I love all of these things. You guys are amazing, and it's so fun to see it because, like I said, it's that optimistic intentionality that's really great, and that's a great way we can start our week. So then we're now going to stay on page 26, but I'm going to combine the next two sections with the weekly major three goals and the to-do list because some people will do these hand in hand. In my brain, I do them hand in hand because the weekly major three goals are my mental and emotional reminders that I need to feel the way I want to feel this time next week. And as I said, because work was what it was, I needed to really lean into some of those mental and emotional reminders so that I was going to be able to get through the week perfectly fine on the other side. And so ways to kind of ways to focus this is the categories. Maybe it's a health, home, and work. Maybe it is a mind, body, soul. Maybe it is again leaning into your word of the week. And so it was the happy mind, happy body, happy soul. That person wanted to feel happy. Or maybe it is just like the three big things that you need to get done. But you can certainly lean into that. You can lean into some of the other things, seasonal reads, holidays. Maybe it is you have three goals for each day, and you have an early, a midday, and an evening goal to kind of set it up that way. Like I said, I'm a big fan of alliterations. Alliterations are a really great way for us to trick our mind to kind of embrace things a little bit more. So a new one that I found were the four C's, and that's the create, consume, cavort, and commune, which I think is such a clever take because a lot of times the best way to approach some of these on the to-dos or even some of the weekly goals is to just kind of categorize or reorganize in that idea. And I think it's really great. And then maybe it is some more of the affirmations, or that's how you use those reminders, the mantras there. Maybe it's leaning into the bingo board. Yes, Nicole, I love your example on the top left. But at the same time, just because we're asking for three in this particular section, maybe that's not what you need. Maybe you need one, maybe you need two. And it's a home and a work because, again, this week looks a little bit different. Then we move into the weekly to-dos. I don't know how this bear got that to-do list, but I want their weekly to-do list. It looks really nice. It makes me happy. And so leaning into that, again, maybe it is pulling some of those categories. Normally I'm a to-do person, but as I said, I've been just a little lackluster, a little less energy. And so my to-do list has not been helpful because then I just haven't been getting anything done. And then I usually, my next kind of to-do hack is the Eisenhower matrix. That really wasn't helpful either. So I've had to kind of really lean into the Pomodoro technique where it is like, no, I'll set a timer, I'll do what I need to do, and then I'll get up and I'll walk away and do some of those things. So I've had to definitely make some adjustments just because I'd rather just sit and throw a pity party on my couch, which everyone is always invited. So maybe again, it's leaning into that recategorization. Maybe it's the needs and the wants. Maybe it's a don't do this instead. Maybe it's breaking down the to-dos by each day, or leaning into some of those stickers. Maybe it is a little bit more of focusing on how did you renew yourself? Again, that same maybe work, personal, breaking it down into the needs and wants in those different categories. Maybe it's a weekly win or the not to do. Or even just again leaning into some of those seasonal, be it the winter. Maybe Elsa wants to come in and add some stickers into there and all those things, or even leaning into those holiday seasons as well. Like I said, I'm going to be a menace with stickers, so mine may just look like stickers for the next month. But I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Loved seeing how you kind of approach this, kind of what you need, even one of the reminders, and kind of incorporating the different ideas. And at the same time, a lot of times my to-do list is very much the same. It's not a section that changes too much. And same thing with my goals, not usually. It's usually the same kind of mental and emotional reminders that I had. But as I mentioned, I've just been in a just weird vibe. So a lot of my stuff has changed and it's been helpful. I found really kind of creative ways to trick myself. And that's where it kind of moves into the habits and activities. So this is still on page 26 at the bottom. I love a good pun. Puns make me happy. So I've been leaning into the cheesy puns, the sassy sharks, and all those things. So I love the couple of reminders. And like I said, don't worry, I'll go back to these, but I think it's fun. And so maybe your habits and activities. So these are the things that I want to do every day. I pull them over from my monthly habit tracker. And this is where, excuse me, I add my lens of reality. So how much time do I have to dedicate to each of these tasks? So I'm a copy and paste person. It's the same three things that I want to do every single day. It's just what sort of added motivation do I need to add? Excuse me. So maybe it's adding in the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So setting those specific goals. Maybe it's reminding here's the habit and activities that you want to stop doing. Maybe this is where those mental and emotional reminders are. Maybe it is a little bit of the I just can't be bothered with these habits and activities at the moment. So it's the stickers, it's the washi tape, it's the covering these things because you're like, I just really need to buckle down on my to-do list, or I really need to buckle down on my meal plan and some of those other sections. And also, just because you have 5 lines does not mean you need to use all 5. Maybe it's 3. Maybe you need to lean a little bit in just to the journal routine. So maybe one of your habits and activities is to check in with your intentions, to work on some of those trackers, lean into those mood trackers, leaning into those daily prompts. I also like the fact that it's formatted with the weekdays versus the weekends, because those always look a little bit different. And then again, you guys know I love my iconography. So these become, I've completely repurposed my expense page for these because I have been really leaning into the small things and the little things and celebrating the little things, making the magic in ordinary days. So I get inspiration from these because a lot of these things are things that I'm already doing. So why not put them on their little mini pedestal and put them down on a list so that I can at least come back. I may not be able to get all of my to-dos done, but I do have a pretty lengthy bucket list and adventure list of things that I did, and it always makes me happy. And then really leaning into any inspiration for the December produce that's there, just because I get excited about December because that's when some of the fruits come back because I'm a little bit more of a fruit person. I do love the veggies though, but they always just look so much prettier. And then at the same time, here are some additional kind of to-do list, bucket list ideas just to get inspiration, as well as just fun little reminders. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this. Again, bottom of page 26, and we will see you soon. But I would like to hear maybe what habits and activities you're working on, or other ways to do it. I know another one that I added was to dress in a brighter color. As I was saying, color can actually be a little bit of a tricky thing. So I'm more of a blue, teal. I'm the cool tone girl, but it's not helping or doing anything for my energy level. So I've been leaning a little bit more into the hot pinks, the yellows, the oranges, something that I would consider as more of a traditional summer color. And it's actually helped boost my mood a little bit. I've got a nice little glow that goes on. So that has been one way that I have kind of tricked myself into being a little bit more excited. So those are just simple things that you can do. And same thing with like put on a great playlist and it'll make you happy as well. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this and we'll see you soon. Thank you everybody for sharing. Sorry, my mouse is being a little slow. It says it's done. It's ready to end the day. So thank you everybody for sharing. I loved seeing certainly the repurposing of the expense tracker. Like I said, to me, it's really fun. Just because, like I said, a lot of these things are already something that we're doing or already kind of incorporating. So why not make it fun? Especially if you want to turn them into a bingo board or something like that. But I also recommend a lot, almost all of these I've gotten from Instagram. So Maya and I both had chatted about doing kind of an Instagram curation. And so now this is what my For You page shows up with. It shows up with sassy sharks, sad frogs, and all these wonderful to-do lists and bucket lists. And it just makes me so much happier. So I highly recommend if you haven't done that kind of type of curation, definitely, because it even gets to the point like, again, they now know what the algorithm wants from me. And so even when I went into Instagram this past week, it was showing me all the new December stuff. And it certainly is so worth the time and energy to do it because then, like I said, it just makes me happy. So now we're going to move on to page 27, which is that second page. And I refer to this as the B side, just because I am a music fan. And so we've now flipped the record. I consistently listen and do everything on the A side that we just did. And the B side is certainly something that I don't always use, but there are some real gems and I love to have them. But I had to kind of come a little bit to terms because it was one of those things I was just kind of only partially doing. I was only sort of like I would start a meal plan and it really wouldn't work, or I would start to kind of keep track kind of in real time, and that really wasn't the vibe either. So I just got to the point where I was like, I use it when I need it. And with that being said, I do have a work trip coming up December 9th. So I do use the meal plan for my packing for that just because I have to limit the suitcases that I can use. So the meal plan can be used exactly as is with that meal plan, or if you're on a specific health journey or you are tracking symptoms, or kind of a cause and effect when it comes to what you're intaking, that can be a great thing to do and use that for, which I have done. Maybe this is just kind of where stickers live, or I know people have been leaning into the doodles. So this is that mental break, as Jen will attest, as she does our coloring socials. That is the best way to kind of just turn your brain off for a little bit, give it a rest, maybe lean into some of that renewal energy and inspiration. So you can do that. It's also leaning into some of those meal plan for the soul. So a little bit more on the daily prompts, especially if you have Jenny, which is our coaching opportunity. She will provide really great prompts for kind of how you're feeling, how you're doing, and it's a great one to do that. Yes, Gloria, I love all your doodles. So I've used those before. Maybe this is where the daily affirmations are. I know some people lean into the haikus with some of the creativity. Like I said, I've used it for a packing list or a wardrobe planner just so I don't overpack. If you've had a little bit of a tricky time, maybe highlighting and finding some of those roses, maybe that's where you want to put your highlights or your to-dos, or leaning into the random acts of the season. Maybe how did you show some self-care renewal as you lean into it? Or then you have the mind body health plan, which is again something that you can either plan for or something that you can contract in real time, because it can be something that you can do either way. And maybe that's where you lean into again that alliteration, trick yourself into, you know, getting a little bit more satisfaction out of it. And I saw Nathania in the chat. I always give a shout out. She's the bottom left one because this is one of those kind of elegantly simplistic mental check-ins that I find the most effective. And it is asking yourself how you feel and therefore what do you need? And I have asked myself, I've gotten up, I've certainly I pull out a post-it note, ask myself those things to make the adjustments. And I find it really powerful and really helpful because then I can kind of regulate and do something a little bit different. A lot of times it's usually I need a break. So walk away, kind of restructure, because then it's like I don't know why all of a sudden I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling a little bit more annoyed. So it's a way for me to kind of check in and see what can I do? How can I fix this? How can I help it? And sometimes the answer is really I just need to kind of like wait it out. Maybe it's an unplug, maybe it again, some more of those self-care ideas, some more of those journal prompts. Maybe it's the 7 types of rest, reading logs, if you're in kind of a cleaning mode. And again, you know, me and the iconography, I love these reminders of the 6 lessons for December. And then who doesn't love a holiday festive penguin? So I'll come back to these, but these are also, I think, great reminders. I feel like I've leaned a little bit into my mind body health plan also also for some of those affirmations, as well as mental and emotional reminders I need to get through the week. And then we've got our shopping list, and this can go hand in hand with the meal plan. Or maybe this is where you start some of that holiday shopping planning. Maybe this is where your bingo boards are, and you start with some of those holiday bingo boards, or even just the boring stuff, the self-care. Um, Maybe it's the social check-in. This is absolutely certainly a good time to do all of those check-ins with folks, as just a reminder there. Maybe it is that don't buy. I use this one for all of the accessories or things that I need to pack. So that's laptop, business cards, adapters, chargers, all those things. Um, so I'll use that in hand with that meal plan. And then maybe it is, I did find this really great, How to Love Yourself December edition, with the berries. But again, maybe this is more just the quotes, some of the glimmer bingos. You can always make adjustments for there. The stickers can go here, or even just the gentle reminders of you're doing a great thing. So I know that was a lot. I will go back. Please let me know if there's a specific slide you want to see or that you want me to stop on. But I am going to play one more song and then we will get together for the close. So we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And then the very last section is the I am loving, which is the bottom of page 27. As I said, I have been in my sassy shark mode. They make me happy. And like I said, they've all been little bit of maybe my attitude toward just my work this week. So that's kind of the vibe I'm living at. That is what I love. That is what makes me happy. And same thing with the how to dress for cold weather. And that's to put the pajamas on and go back to bed. So love all those. And so we've actually reached the end. Can you believe it? It definitely goes by so quickly. But as always, we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. You all provide such amazing inspiration as well as wonderful ideas. So if you would like to share your weekly pages, I know there are people in the app that would appreciate it. We certainly like to use them. Excuse me, for our socials. And as we'd said, here are Black Friday sale offerings, and there will be one coming out for Cyber Monday, so keep an eye out on that, as well as for the from the socials. And then we will have New Year options as well. And if you have any questions or concerns about the coaching, definitely reach out to hello@silkandsonder.com for all of those questions. But basically, don't pay full price for anything on the website right now. When in doubt, ask them and they will get back to you so you can benefit from those sale options. And here is a copy of my playlist. I will include the Spotify link in the chat. I save all of mine. They're labeled, so if you need some fun inspiration, it is always there. And at the end of the day, I am excited that you joined us. I am looking forward to this week ahead, the first full week of December. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I know you're going to have an amazing week as we embrace renewal for December before the end of the year comes up all of a sudden. It'll be here before you know it. But we hope that you have an amazing rest of your week, and we hope to see you at a future event, and we will see you again soon. Bye.